All right, so good morning. Welcome to the second hour of Wake Up America Weekend. It's still Saturday. It's still April 2nd. Yesterday was April Fool's Day. I don't get a chance to make any jokes on air. I'm sure the producers are super happy about that one.
Yeah, you know, April Fool's Day is actually my dad's birthday, so that was my,
But is it really?
I don't know. That's a good question, Dad. Anyways, I'm Amanda Brilhanty. Here's some of the stories we're following you for this morning.
All right, so it's day 38 of Putin's war in Ukraine. Russian troops now reportedly pulling out of the northern part of the country. Reportedly, they've done this before. Now, the focus of the aggression appears to be shifting to the east. We have a live report from Ukraine coming up.
That's right. And obesity, well, it's a problem before, during, and now in the aftermath of the pandemic. Americans forced to work from home. As we know, there was that pandemic 15, but many now heading back to the office to sit at desk all day. So we're going to be talking about solutions coming up later in this hour.
Definitely. And the crisis on the border not letting up under the Biden administration. Now there's word that Title 42, which is where they can actually come into America while they're adjudicating their ability to get here and stay here, it's going to come to an end in May. The Trump administration had this effort to curb illegal immigration, and Biden could get rid of it.
And as we're seeing, we already have that influx of immigrants coming in, especially with, you know, them bringing in up to 100,000 Ukrainian refugees as well. And they're also down at the southern border. Yeah,
so speaking of the refugee crisis out of Ukraine, let's bring in former Brigadier General and retired Air Force General and Newsmax reporter Blaine Holt. General, welcome back. It's been an hour, so I'm sure your sources have given you some new information on the ground about the shift in the combat. Now, we've seen Russia move stuff around. They put some videos out of moving tanks out at one point on trains last month when we thought they are actually going to end the conflict. How critical is this to the overall effort? Is it a show that Putin might not be as convinced about his ability to take over the rest of Ukraine?
Well, they are at a point of inflection, that is for certain. Whether this is an absolute redeployment and a shifting of strategic goals about what they wanted to accomplish, that's going to remain to be seen. But I wouldn't give up hope for those who said yesterday, oh, look, they said they're leaving, and now look, they're firing weapons right on into Kyiv and all of that. Right. The Russian commanders on the ground are very much concerned and worried about being chased across the border by Ukrainian forces that are coming after them. Right. So we're going to have to watch for a couple of days as the dust settles, but it does look like they're much more focused in the east on Donbass. They want that land bridge from Donbass down into Crimea, and so Mariupol is in their crosshairs, what's left of it.
Yeah, and that would essentially landlock the rest of Ukraine and shipping and everything like that, really cutting off supplies, which the port's not really being used that much right now because of the threat to the shipping companies. But, however, there's been some reports recently that Putin is making decisions on this war on false information, that his advisors, his staffers, they're not giving him the whole story because they're afraid to tell him that his troops are getting beat up kind of bad by a bunch of essentially militia folks that are Ukrainian. Do you have any truth to that? Do you think that's the case?
Yes, I do. I'm talking to folks on both sides of that border. And on the Russian side, it's very clear that Putin really only tolerates yes men. He wants to hear what he wants to hear. And so, going into this, Putin had convinced himself with the help of his advisors that his military was fully modernized, state of the art, ready to rival any force, and that this was going to be a blitzkrieg. And now he finds out that's absolutely not so. We talked about the fact that this military could be embarrassed. They had no significant combat experience, and they weren't very well disciplined, and they're not a very professional corps.
Yeah. No, it is interesting to see how this evolves, because, I mean, like we all said, I even thought this was going to be like a 5-day war, because I had the perception that they were a fully modernized thing. There also have been reports that civilian planes flying anywhere near Ukraine, Poland, other NATO countries around there, Romania, Lithuania, places like that, that they're actually having radar jamming. Talk about this. Are there any violations into the NATO spaces that you see coming up? And is there anything being done to potentially curb that? Is there any counterattack that you can stop radar blocking?
So there are. I mean, it's the electronic warfare game. They really are supposed to be respecting these borders and make sure that EW or electronic warfare and jamming is not happening outside of this war zone. That would be the law of armed conflict. Mm-hmm. They don't care about any of that. I do know that airline pilots are being fully briefed that their equipment could be jammed, GPS signals could be jammed. And there are ways to get around that from an aviation perspective. But there'll be more to come on that. There are countermeasures to the countermeasures. And I would highly recommend that we get interested in supplying the Ukrainians with those as well.
Yeah, but I mean, at some point, like, what's the difference between supplying them an AT-4, a Javelin, or anti-radar stuff, or, I don't know, a MiG-29?
Well, we've now gone into word parsing on the political trail of what constitutes a defensive weapon versus an offensive weapon. Show me the weapon and how you're using it, and I'll tell you whether it's an offensive or a defensive weapon. But it gets to this place where a couple of helicopters go drop some gravity bombs on a fuel dump in Russia. Was that offense, or was that reciprocity in kind, which is very much within the law of armed conflict?
Yeah, that's the issue. It becomes a war of being able to articulate things as different. It's basically like a war of lawyers at that point, which never ends well for the people like me and you on the ground. General Blaine Holt, we appreciate you joining us on this.
Thank you.
All right.
Hey, I'm Rob Finnerty. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please join the conversation in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe, too. Hit the bell icon to be alerted to breaking news. And remember, there's a whole lot more on Newsmax TV, America's fastest growing cable news network. Newsmax TV, we're real news for real people.